Hello, my name is Joanna Kakeo, aka Jokabacco. Welcome to my YouTube channel. For this very first video, I decided to create a character from scratch. I headed over to Twitter and asked my followers to help me design a character for my very first YouTube video. Creature of Darkness won by very slim margins. Then we had to figure out personality and hopeless romantic won, and last but not least, we had to figure out the overall design aesthetic. In the final prompt, cottagecore and 80s were tied to figure out the overall design aesthetic of our character. Because Creature of Darkness won by very slim margins, I decided to actually design two characters. So ta-da! Surprise! You get two characters for this video. So I ended up designing a Creature of Darkness with 80s wear aesthetics and a underwater creature with cottagecore aesthetics. I first started off with the Creature of Darkness, trying to figure out her overall vibes and look. Leaning in towards 80s aesthetics, I thought a high ponytail would be a perfect hairstyle for her. I played a lot with antlers and horns to figure out the demonic side of this character, and in the end I decided to not go with it. Instead, I leaned a lot more into the high ponytail and decided to create that as a wisp of darkness or a cloud of darkness, whatever have you, and I really like that. Kind of think of Hades' hair from Hercules. So I tried once more to do the horns, ended up not liking the overall silhouette of it, so decided to just focus primarily on her hair. I ended up giving her two sets of eyes to give her a more Creature of Darkness look, and definitely leaned into the 80s wears aesthetic, having the contrasting tight pants with the boxy tops. Now with my underwater creature, I tried to go with the most obvious using a mermaid design, but trying to design a dress over her mermaid tail was proving quite difficult for me. I was struggling a lot with the silhouette and liking a silhouette. I'm sure many artists have successfully created mermaids with dresses, but I am definitely not one of those people. I did try different creatures, even ones with webbed feet, but in the end I decided to go with a character with octopus tentacles for hair, and I absolutely love her, so I went with her immediately. Now you can see me quickly sketching out the overall poses that my two characters will have in this final illustration. For some reason, I struggle a lot with scaling two characters side by side together, so you'll see me play around with the transforms tool to make sure that they are the correct size in relation to one another. For my drawing process, I like to do a very quick sketch just to figure out the overall shapes and where everyone's standing, and then I go into a more detailed sketch that has their facial features, where I want the fabric folds to go and what the hand poses are, etc., etc. And then I go into the more clean line art. Looking back, I probably should have designed their poses way more into the hopeless romantic prompt, but I guess I somehow forgot the prompt and was just designing two characters that were in love and getting ready for a date, and that was the poses that I essentially did. It's a very basic pose that mainly showcases their design and not necessarily their personality. Definitely a mistake on my behalf, but if you would like to see a video that showcases their hopeless romanticness more, please let me know down below in the comments. I definitely want to know if that is something that people would be interested in, if I should figure out more like personality, poses type things, and whatnot. If you'd like to be part of the Twitter polls to help decide the feature content for my channel, absolutely follow me over at Twitter at Jokabacco. The link will be down below in the description. If you don't have Twitter or if you don't like using Twitter, you could also let me know what you think and what you would like to see down below in the comments as well. Just so you know, my drawing tools, I like to use the Procreate program on the Apple Store. I also use an iPad 2018 generation, the 10-inch screen, I believe. I would love to one day upgrade to the newer iPad, mainly because the pen can charge on the side of the iPad rather than having to plug it in at the bottom, which is the worst because you're terrified of knocking the pen out of place and breaking it. And that is a $150 pen or something like that in Canadian. So definitely would love to upgrade one day, but at the moment I cannot. Just so you know, this video is actually sped up 6 times, in case anyone is wondering in terms of how quickly I actually do draw. If I did the actual time-lapse, actual genuine recording, it'd be much slower. So I always find speed recordings are a very tiny glimpse into how quickly a person can draw. I believe this drawing took me about an hour, but I could be wrong. So shortly coming up, you will witness my blunder in this illustration. It is such a simple blunder that could have been prevented, but I was so silly. I did not flip the canvas at the sketching stage. And because I did not do that, my illustration was tilting because the balance of the characters just wasn't there. So I somewhat fixed my octopus-haired girl by using the transform tool, but I had to absolutely redraw my creature of darkness's legs. Such a shame. I had to redraw those heckin' heels all over again, but of course I'm gonna fix this mistake. I'm obviously not gonna leave this mistake after I've seen the awfulness of flipping your canvas. So take it from me, all artists, or whoever is watching this video, also a note to self: flip your canvas at the sketching stage and save yourself the headache that I gave myself. We are finally getting into the colors. For the colors, absolutely 80s wear is neon. which was actually kind of difficult considering that the design that I'm doing is a creature of darkness. So I didn't want to go too flashy and too in your face. So I stuck to just 2 bright neon colors and decided that the base of the jacket would be a very dark tone. With most of my simple illustrations, I like to use a very limited color palette. So utilizing the colors from my creature of darkness, I use those colors in my underwater creature. I actually surprisingly struggled a lot with the pink tentacles. I knew I wanted it to be some sort of pink. I just didn't know how bright of a pink and how vibrant and contrasty I wanted it to be. And then I struggled a lot with figuring out the dress and figuring out the values. So I started off with the dress being like a very cream color, but wanting to have a more interesting values in the colors, I decided to go with a darker purplish blue for the dress, and then brighten up her tentacles for her hair. Now I'm just editing the colors just so that the colors are more cohesive with one another and that they match. I ended up pushing the colors to be more purple, so the yellow turned to be more saturated, or desaturated I mean, and I really pushed in the pink tones a lot more. I'm just adding some spotted details into the tentacles. I love adding the spotted patterns on tentacles. It's absolutely my favorite. And adding a crosshatch onto the bag to showcase that it is more of a canvas texture. Trying to make fabric shiny is definitely a skill that I am terrible at, so I definitely should practice that for sure. I follow quite a few artists that are fantastic at making shinier leather type fabrics and like rendering that perfectly, so I definitely should take notes from them. Now I am putting in the detail for the Creature of Darkness's swirly cloud-like hair. I struggled a lot with it mainly because of the outline, and I had to actually erase the outline of her hair, of her ponytail essentially completely, and then rendered in the cloud texture. In order to achieve this, all I did was play around with opacities in the brush and layered it on top of one another to create the right texture and rendering that I wanted for her hair. For shading, I like to use one color for the entire thing for characters specifically. Not necessarily backgrounds, but for characters I like to use one color so that the shading is cohesive throughout the whole illustration, and then I use a masking tool and mask it away. I do a more self-shaded look mainly because I am influenced very strongly by 2D animation. I grew up with like Ghibli and Disney and Don Bluth, however you say his last name. But like 2D animation is where it's at for my childhood, so I'm definitely inspired by how cel-shading looks against painterly backgrounds for sure. We are just getting to the final touches of this video by adding a colored rectangular box. I hope you enjoyed watching. If you'd like to support me on Patreon, you can get 1 week's early access to all of my videos. I hope you enjoyed watching. Please like and subscribe and share with your friends. Hope you have a wonderful day. Bye bye.